When I look back, it feels like my childhood was stolen from me. My chance at college? Shattered. And when I told my own mother that I had been homeless, she laughed. That was the final straw. I decided I wasn't going to let her walk away unscathed after everything she had done. My life started in chaos. I have 4 siblings, 1 older sister and 3 younger ones, each with different fathers. Before I was even born, my mom had already lost custody of my older sister. She had attacked the girl's father with a knife while he was holding her. After that, my sister went to live with her father's family in another city. By the time I came along, things were much better. My dad went to jail when I was only a toddler, and even when he was around, he was an alcoholic. That left me with my mom, who was raising me alone. She worked, sure, but she carried bitterness like a weapon. All of her hatred for my father, and the world landed on me. She had been abused herself growing up, which I know must have twisted her view of relationships and life, but knowing that didn't make it easier to endure. From the ages of 4 or 5 until 17, I lived in constant fear. She was big, strong, and merciless. I was punished for everything, sometimes for nothing. If her room was messy, I was beaten. If the dishes weren't done, even when I hadn't been home, I was beaten. If I walked too loudly, I'd get hit. On my 10th birthday, she broke my nose just because I looked at her the wrong way. She used whatever she could find to hurt me: fists, hangers, extension cords, bats, even chairs. I never had peace. Even in my room, she'd constantly summon me to fetch things, or just to scream. Sometimes she took it further. Once she held a knife to my neck, only to be stopped by her boyfriend. Another time, she burned Christmas presents that had been given to me by others, just to make sure I felt worthless. Strangely, she also tried to cover the abuse by spoiling me with electronics and video games. It didn't help. It never canceled out the bruises or the fear. The only small rebellions I managed were petty: spitting in her drinks, rubbing utensils on myself before serving her dinner, ignoring her cries when she was sick. They were pathetic acts of revenge that did nothing to change my reality. By high school, I was angry, bitter, and broken. I turned to alcohol to cope. I didn't care about much. I was cold, calculating. And she only made things worse by throwing me out every few months, telling me to go live somewhere else. At one point, she even sent me to another country for a year, and when I tried to come back, she tried to keep my passport. Luckily, with the help of the U.S. Embassy and my stepfather, I made it back. By then, she had already moved on to some other guy. When I finally got back for senior year, all the credits I'd earned before didn't transfer. I had to settle for a GED. Still, I pushed forward. I got jobs, even though I wasn't good at saving money. My mom eventually promised me that if I went to college, I could live with her until I finished. I wanted so badly to believe her. So I enrolled in a 2-year college. I was full-time, pulling a 3.7 GPA, and for the first time in my life, I felt like I was escaping. My teachers believed in me, and that meant something. But at the end of my 2nd semester, while I was trying to focus on finals, it all came crashing down again. One night, I came home around 10 p.m. She flung the door open, screaming at me about when I was going to move out. I was buzzed from drinking, so I just ignored her. I knew if I opened my mouth, I'd explode, and I'd always tried to avoid yelling back because it only made things worse. I went straight to my room, but she barged in behind me, yelling in my face. I stayed silent. She stormed off and called the police, telling them she thought I was going to murder her and my siblings. That was insane. She was the one who had nearly killed me countless times. I didn't wait around. I packed a duffel bag and left. I failed all my finals because I couldn't get back to school. And from there, life went downhill. For the next couple of years, I drifted in and out of homelessness. I made bad choices, kept bad habits, but I survived. Slowly, I found a hobby that grew into something profitable. It gave me a sense of purpose. Eventually, I got an apartment, a full-time job, and some stability. I had cut off contact with my mom, but through social media, my younger sister found me. She didn't have it as bad as me, though she still got hit sometimes. One day, out of the blue, my mom emailed me, cheerful, acting like nothing had ever happened. Against my better judgment, I gave her a chance. We talked on the phone. For a few minutes, it seemed like maybe, just maybe, things could be okay. Then she asked what I'd been doing for the past few years. I told her honestly. I had been homeless, struggling, but eventually, I pulled myself out. And she laughed. She actually laughed at me. She mocked me, saying I didn't know what abuse was, that nothing had ever happened to me, and that it was my own fault I ended up on the streets. That was it. I hung up. I was beyond furious, beyond hurt. After everything she had done to me, she had the audacity to erase it, to act like I was crazy, to laugh at my pain. And in that moment, I decided I wasn't going to let her get away with it anymore. There were plenty of things my mother never realized about me. She had no idea that her well-paying job, the one she liked to flaunt, was based on lies. She never earned the degree listed on her resume, and I knew that for a fact. She also didn't know I had access to every one of her email and cloud storage accounts, because I was the one who set them up when I was younger. She never bothered to change her passwords, so I stayed connected to everything she thought was private. But the biggest secret she didn't know was that I had been documenting her abuse for years. From the time I was 13 until the very last time she put her hands on me, I took photos of every bruise, every mark, every bloody nose. I kept them carefully stored on my computer and backed them up to Google Drive. My younger sister, who wasn't spared from the violence, had been sending me her own photos too, evidence of the bruises and injuries she received at my mother's hands. I gathered everything: photos, videos, timestamps, and built a file too big to ignore. The first step I took was contacting Child Protective Services. I explained what had been happening to me for years and how it was now happening to my siblings. I told them I had undeniable proof. Because I had already called the police on my mother in the past, and because of the record with my older sister's removal, they took me seriously right away. Within a day, they showed up at the house with the police. By pure coincidence, they arrived in the middle of my mother beating my little sister. That was the breaking point. CPS immediately removed all of my siblings, and my mother was arrested. She didn't stay locked up long, though. She was released the same day. I still received updates about everything she said and did, thanks to her best friend, who couldn't keep a secret if her life depended on it. That friend told her son, and her son told me. Through this chain of loose lips, I knew exactly what was happening behind the scenes. After I handed CPS all the evidence I had, the case against her became official. But I wasn't done. The next day, I called her employer and explained how she had lied to get her position, claiming a degree she never earned. I also made sure to mention the ongoing situation with CPS. That triggered a background check. Within days, she was fired. $75,000 a year gone. On top of that, she was blacklisted from her industry. I wasn't finished. Out of pure spite, I deleted every email account and cloud account I had ever created for her. She had tied most of her bills and personal accounts to those addresses, so I knew it would leave her scrambling. Then I took it one step further. I reported her to the IRS. For years, she had committed tax fraud by claiming children who weren't hers. I lived in the same house while she bragged about it, so I knew exactly how she did it. I handed them everything. Now she owed thousands of dollars she didn't have. In the span of weeks, my mother lost her kids, her career, her reputation, and her financial security. I still don't know how she'll keep her house or pay her debts, but I do know she has court dates coming up and felony charges looming over her. She doesn't know that I was the one who set all of this in motion. My plan is to keep that secret until she's old and frail, until her life is nearly over, and then I'll tell her the truth, just so she knows it was me all along. And maybe, just maybe, I'll also let her know I once peed in her Lipton tea. As for me, I had to swallow my pride and move into a homeless shelter specifically meant for people who are working and trying to save. It's not glamorous, but it gives me a roof and the chance to rebuild. I've put together an action plan for myself, goals, steps, the whole map of how I want to grow as a person. For the first time in my life, I've started to wonder what I could achieve if I gave myself a real chance. It wasn't long ago that I wanted nothing more than to be gone from this world. I thought life would be easier if my mother had just finished the job when I was a kid. But something inside me shifted. I still don't feel much for anyone, not even my siblings, but I've made a promise, to myself and to them, that I won't let my lack of feeling stop me from doing the right thing. I visit them when I can, especially my little sister, and though I don't feel what I think I should, I'm determined to be there. I've also cut back on drinking. In the past, it was nearly every day, drowning out everything I couldn't handle. Now it's been only 3 times in 4 months. That might not sound like much to some people, but for me, it's progress. CPS still has my siblings, and I can't say much about their situation. What I do know is that my mother's chance to regain custody fell apart when her life started collapsing even further. She stopped paying her mortgage. Her fiancé, the father of my youngest sibling, called off the engagement and started fighting for custody himself. According to the updates I got through her best friend's son, she was falling apart, spiraling, disappearing. But her suffering didn't bring me joy. That was never what I wanted. This wasn't about winning. I just wanted the abuse to stop. And then something happened that I never expected. My phone rang, and it was her. For years, her calls sent me into panic. But when I saw her name flash across the screen this time, I felt nothing. Just another meaningless event. When I picked up, she didn't say hello. She ordered me to go somewhere quiet and then immediately launched into her sob story. She hadn't spoken to me in months. The last time we spoke, she mocked me for being homeless and denied ever laying a hand on me. Now she was rambling about money, how much she'd lost, how she didn't understand how it all went wrong. And then she started on the real topic, the one that mattered to her. She said she missed my little sister and my brothers. She whined about how their removal had ruined her tax season. And then she had the audacity. She started trying to convince me that I should go to the caseworkers on her behalf to support her claim that she never abused me or my siblings. The audacity of her saying that, after everything she did, was unbelievable. And she said it so casually, 9 minutes into the conversation, as if none of it had ever happened. But for me, it wasn't anything new. I cut her off right away, though by that point my mind was already settled on what I needed to do. I asked her if she remembered how I used to make her iced tea when I was younger. That caught her off guard, but she said yes. I let a pause hang for a few seconds before slowly explaining, in detail, the ways I had secretly ruined her Lipton iced tea over the years. She tried interrupting once, but I kept going. I told her how I always dumped in way too much sugar, so much that she never noticed, and just kept drinking. I explained how I'd wait until after dinner, when I got home from school, to shower so that I could rub her spoons between my butt cheeks before she used them, making sure they carried the worst of it into her food. I described specific days, exact moments, the things I knew she would remember. At first she was quiet, and I wasn't even sure if she was still listening. But eventually she snapped, cutting me off and screaming at me, calling me every vile thing she could think of. It sounded just like it used to when she towered over me with an extension cord in hand, whipping the skin off me. She cursed me, said I ruined her life, and cried that she wished she had a better child. She had no idea that the destruction she was talking about, the collapse of her world, was something I directly caused. She thought she was blaming me for the past, not realizing it was also about her present. I didn't give her the satisfaction of reacting. I just let her scream until she was out of breath. For years I had dreamed about telling her everything I bottled up, rehearsing what I'd say if I ever had the chance. But in the end, I didn't need to yell. When she finally quieted down, I calmly said, "Mom, you don't know what abuse is. And honestly, this is all your fault. You did this to yourself. Also, my bad for pissing in your iced tea." Then I hung up the phone and blocked her number. That was the last conversation I had with her, and that was also the last day I drank alcohol. Since then, I haven't spoken to her again. Maybe she suspects it was me who set everything in motion, maybe not. I never said it outright, but if she really thought about it, she'd figure it out. Either way, I don't care anymore. I don't want her apology. I just want to move forward and become a better person. It probably sounds contradictory after all the things I admitted to doing, but it's the truth. I want to put as much good into the world as I can. But when it comes to her, I feel nothing except the satisfaction that I'm no longer her victim. A couple of months ago, I reconnected with my aunt after not seeing her for years. We had a long, heartfelt conversation, and for a moment it felt good to have that bond again. But during that talk, she told me she still spoke with my mother almost every day. She mentioned everything my mom was going through, but had no idea I was the reason for it. She even felt sorry for her, which didn't surprise me. My aunt has always been the caring type. I told her that I was uncomfortable with her bringing up my mother in our conversations and asked her not to, but she didn't really listen. Not long after that, my aunt told me something that shook me. My mother was coming back to the US. She was scheduled to arrive at the airport in a week. What made it worse was that my aunt told her I would be there too, so the three of us could sit down and work things out. She hadn't asked me, hadn't warned me, just assumed I'd be part of this reunion. I can't describe the feeling of betrayal I had in that moment. One of the only people I trusted had put me in that position. And as wrong as it might sound, I honestly would have preferred my mother just believe I had died rather than think I'd be waiting for her with open arms. My aunt kept pushing, telling me I needed to be open-minded, that I had to give my mother another chance. She said even though she wasn't there to see everything, she still loved us both and wanted us to reconcile. But how do you reconcile with someone who tried to kill you? How do you forgive waking up at 5 a.m. to your own mother's hands wrapped around your throat, choking you because you weren't getting up fast enough for school? If you've never opened your eyes to that kind of terror, count yourself lucky. I lied to my aunt. I told her I'd try, that I'd sit down with them and talk about the nearly 20 years of abuse. I had no intention of doing that. As soon as I hung up with her, I called the detectives who had given me their number months back, just in case I heard from my mom. I asked them a few hypothetical questions about what would happen if a person with an outstanding warrant showed up. Then I put my plan together. I wasn't even sure she'd make it through customs. I didn't know how she was allowed to travel internationally with a warrant, but somehow, she did. That's just who she is, good at being terrible. When she got off the plane, she called my aunt. My aunt said she was coming to meet her, and I told her I'd wait at the Starbucks nearby so we could all go somewhere else together. She agreed. As soon as my aunt left to meet her, I called the detective. I told him my mother was standing only a few feet away from me and asked if they could meet us at the place we were heading to. They told me that wouldn't be necessary, that officers closer by would take it from there. I waited at the airport, sitting with this heavy weight in my chest, a knot that only tightened the longer I sat there. Officers were circling the food court, searching with that casual alertness that seemed both reassuring and terrifying. My mother and my aunt came walking toward me from the gate, talking animatedly as if this was just another ordinary day. Every step they took closer made my gut sink lower. My mind raced. What if the officers stopped looking right when my mother appeared? What if, once again, she slipped through untouched, as she always seemed to? But I forced myself to stay quiet, burying that storm of panic inside me. I'd learned over the years how to silence the chaos in my own head. As they reached me, their faces lit with conversation, I leapt to my feet before they could even speak. Words tumbled out of my mouth. I ordered some teas, let me check if they're ready. An excuse that made no sense but was good enough to get me away. I hurried off, weaving past the Starbucks counter and slipping outside the food court, half jogging to where the officers were still scanning the area. I approached them, my heart hammering. "Did you get a call about a woman with a warrant?" I asked. They confirmed they had. I told them it was my mother, gave them her first name, then they verified the last. "She's sitting in Starbucks right now," I said, pointing them directly to her. One of the officers chuckled, shaking his head, clearly surprised at how blunt I was about turning in my own mother. I told them I'd make sure she stayed put, and they followed me back inside, hanging back a dozen paces. When I reached the table again, my mother's eyes rose to me, that familiar scowl twisting her face. My aunt asked about the drinks, but I cut her off. My focus was fixed squarely on my mother. Her scowl melted into confusion as I spoke. "Mom, I know we don't get along, but I want you to know, it's all my fault." She frowned, tilting her head, her tone suddenly soft and almost maternal. "What do you mean it's your fault? Why would you think?" I didn't let her finish. I interrupted, something I knew she despised. I want you to know exactly whose fault this is. When you're sitting in jail wondering why the world has treated you so unfairly, remember this. It was me. And it was my piss you drank. The words landed. Her confusion snapped into outrage. She sputtered, then her hand cracked across my face with a slap so loud it turned heads. My aunt's mouth fell open in shock. People nearby stared. The officers, who had just walked in, saw it all unfold. Seconds later, they were on her, handcuffs clinking as they pulled her away. She exploded, cursing, screaming threats, spitting words no mother should ever direct at her child. She swore she'd kill me. The mask slipped entirely, her true nature on full display for everyone to witness. I trailed behind as far as I could while they dragged her toward a holding room to await the detective's arrival. I didn't linger. The adrenaline ebbed quickly, leaving behind nothing but emptiness. I walked out, broke my 2-month streak of sobriety, and drank. Before I left, my aunt turned to me, her voice full of disappointment. She told me what I did was disgusting, spiteful, that she didn't know if she could forgive me. And she wasn't wrong. I'd done it purely out of spite, and I already knew it wasn't the action of a good person. Later, I learned my mother had been using my aunt's passport to travel in and out of the country. That's how she avoided capture for so long. Now my aunt has to answer for that, and I hate that she's been dragged into this mess. She's always been kind to me, and she doesn't deserve the fallout. But my mother does. Just for the passport alone, she's looking at up to 10 years. On top of that, charges for child endangerment and other crimes are stacking against her. Her husband left. Her children were taken. Friends have vanished. After 19 years of abuse, I got my revenge. And strangely, none of the charges even have anything to do with me. But did it feel good?
No.
I felt nothing. No triumph, no satisfaction, no relief. Just the rise and fall of the moment. Emptiness. So now, all I can do is keep pushing toward the person I want to become. She told me for years that I was worthless, that I'd never amount to anything. I repeated those same lies to myself for far too long. But I've made a decision. I will become one of the greatest photographers of my time. I will push myself until I succeed. I want anyone who's been broken the way I was to see that they can still rise, that they can still achieve greatness. Right now, I'm in a homeless shelter. I've been here 6 months. I chose it because drifting between couches, drinking, and wasting away wasn't helping me move forward. Here, I can save money, work on consistency, and focus on my craft. Just weeks ago, I got a housing voucher, and soon I'll be able to move into a 1-bedroom or a studio. I've been saving aggressively for my small paychecks. My dream may sound foolish to some, but I know it isn't. It's a plan. I'll be starting school again in the fall, studying photography properly this time. My siblings' situations are complicated, and I won't share details, but they're doing all right for now. As for my mother, I rarely think of her anymore. And when I do, the only part of me that feels anything hopes she isn't suffering too much. I don't like knowing people are in pain, even her. But that doesn't change the fact that she made her bed. My future is ahead of me now. And for the first time in a long time, I believe it can be mine.